The dinner table held more than food back then. It held hope, ingenuity, and the kind of wisdom that only comes from making something from nothing. While we complain about grocery prices today, our grandparents survived the Great Depression and World War II rationing by creating meals that stretched every penny and fed entire families. These are the 25 forgotten budget recipes that kept our ancestors alive and well-fed when times were toughest. Beef stew. Grandma's beef stew started with the cheapest cuts of meat, tough, stringy pieces that most people threw away. She'd brown small chunks of beef in a heavy pot, then add whatever vegetables were on sale or growing in the garden. Potatoes, carrots, onions, and celery were the standards, but turnips, parsnips, and even cabbage found their way into the pot. The secret was cooking it low and slow for hours until the tough meat became tender and the vegetables melted into a thick, hearty broth. This one pot fed a family of 8 for 2 days, with the leftovers getting even better overnight. The stew was so thick you could eat it with a fork, and it stuck to your ribs through long, cold winters when heating bills were high and money was tight. Hot dogs and sauerkraut. When meat was expensive, hot dogs were the affordable protein that made families feel like they were eating well. Grandparents would buy the cheapest hot dogs available and stretch them with homemade or store-bought sauerkraut. The tangy, fermented cabbage added vitamins and flavor, while making a few hot dogs feed more people. This dish cooked in one pan, sliced hot dogs browned with onions, then sauerkraut added to steam and heat through. Some families added potatoes to make it even more filling. The combination of salty meat and sour cabbage created a satisfying meal that cost pennies per serving. Kids loved it because hot dogs felt like a treat, while parents appreciated how far their grocery money stretched. This German-influenced dish became American comfort food during hard times when every meal had to count. Beef stroganoff. Depression-era beef stroganoff used ground beef instead of expensive steak, making this fancy-sounding dish affordable for working families. Ground beef was browned with onions, then mixed with mushroom soup and sour cream to create a rich, creamy sauce. The sauce was served over egg noodles or rice, whichever was cheaper at the store. This dish made a small amount of meat feed a large family because the noodles and sauce were so filling. Smart cooks added extra vegetables like mushrooms or peas to stretch the meat even further. The creamy sauce made everything taste rich and special, even when made with the cheapest ingredients. Families felt like they were eating restaurant food when beef stroganoff appeared on the table, proving that good cooking could make budget ingredients taste expensive. Creamed tuna on toast. Canned tuna was one of the cheapest sources of protein available, and creamed tuna on toast turned it into a filling meal. A can of tuna was mixed with white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk, then seasoned with salt and pepper. The creamy mixture was served over toasted bread, making a complete meal from pantry staples. Some families added frozen peas or diced celery for extra nutrition and texture. This dish was popular because tuna was shelf-stable and didn't require refrigeration until opened. The white sauce made the tuna go further, while adding calories and richness. Children who might refuse plain tuna would eat it when it was creamy and served on toast. Many families ate this dish once a week because it was so economical and easy to prepare. Pork chops with applesauce. Pork chops were often cheaper than beef, and applesauce helped tenderize tough cuts while adding sweetness to the meal. Thin pork chops were browned in a skillet, then simmered with homemade or store-bought applesauce until tender. The fruit helped break down the tough fibers and cheap cuts of pork while adding natural sweetness. This dish worked with pork shoulder chops or any inexpensive cut that needed slow cooking. The applesauce also added vitamins and fiber, making the meal more nutritious. Some families made their own applesauce from windfall apples or bought the cheapest canned variety. The combination of meat and fruit created a balanced meal that satisfied both adults and children. This dish proved that simple ingredients could create complex flavors when cooked with care and patience. Meatloaf with mashed potatoes. Meatloaf stretched expensive ground beef with cheap fillers like breadcrumbs, oats, or crackers. Eggs and milk held everything together, while onions added flavor that made the dish taste more expensive than it was. The meatloaf was baked in a loaf pan and served with mashed potatoes made from real potatoes, not instant flakes. Smart cooks added grated vegetables like carrots or celery to the meatloaf mixture to increase nutrition and bulk. The mashed potatoes were made with milk and butter when possible, or just water and salt when money was tight. This meal provided protein, carbohydrates, and vegetables in one affordable package. Leftover meatloaf made excellent sandwiches the next day, extending the value even further. Families could eat well for 2 days on one meatloaf, making it a staple of Depression-era cooking. Chicken a la king. This elegant-sounding dish used leftover chicken, or the cheapest chicken parts, to create a meal that felt special. Diced chicken was mixed with white sauce, peas, and sometimes mushrooms or peppers. The creamy mixture was served over rice, noodles, or biscuits, whatever was most affordable. This dish was perfect for using up small amounts of leftover chicken that wouldn't make a full meal on their own. The white sauce made the chicken go further, while adding richness and calories. Some families used canned chicken or even chicken bouillon to create the base when fresh chicken wasn't available. The dish tasted fancy enough for Sunday dinner, but was economical enough for weeknight meals. Children loved the creamy texture and mild flavors, making it a reliable family pleaser during tough times. Tuna casserole. Tuna casserole became the ultimate budget meal because it used inexpensive canned tuna, noodles, and whatever vegetables were available. Egg noodles were cooked and mixed with tuna, cream soup, and frozen or canned vegetables. The mixture was topped with breadcrumbs or crushed crackers and baked until golden. This dish was perfect for feeding large families because it was mostly starch and vegetables, with just enough protein to make it satisfying. Smart cooks added whatever vegetables were on sale: peas, corn, green beans, or carrots. The casserole could be made ahead and reheated, making it perfect for busy working families. One pan fed 6 to 8 people, and leftovers were just as good the next day. This dish proved that creativity could turn simple ingredients into comfort food. Salisbury steak with brown gravy. Salisbury steak was basically hamburger shaped into patties and covered with gravy to make it feel like a proper steak dinner. Ground beef was mixed with breadcrumbs, eggs, and seasonings, then formed into oval patties and browned. The patties were simmered in brown gravy, made from beef broth, flour, and drippings. This dish made cheap ground beef taste more expensive while providing a filling meal. The gravy was often made with bouillon cubes or beef base when fresh broth wasn't available. Served with mashed potatoes and vegetables, it felt like a complete restaurant meal. Some families added mushrooms or onions to the gravy for extra flavor. This dish satisfied the desire for meat and potatoes while staying within tight budget constraints. Waffle breakfast. Waffles weren't just for special occasions. They were an economical way to make filling breakfasts from basic ingredients. Flour, eggs, milk, and baking powder created batter that cooked into crispy waffles on inexpensive waffle irons. The waffles were served with homemade syrup made from sugar and water, or butter and jam when syrup wasn't available. This breakfast was more filling than toast or cereal, while using ingredients that most families kept on hand. Some families added cornmeal to the batter to make it more nutritious and economical. The waffles could be made ahead and reheated, making busy mornings easier. Children loved waffles because they felt like a treat, while parents appreciated how far the ingredients stretched. This breakfast provided energy for long days of physical work while keeping food costs low. Canned soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. This classic combination became a staple because it was quick, cheap, and satisfying. Canned soup was diluted with water or milk to make it go further, while grilled cheese sandwiches were made with the cheapest bread and cheese available. The hot soup and crispy sandwich created a complete meal that warmed the body and soul. Families often chose tomato soup because it was the least expensive variety, and the acidity paired well with rich cheese. Some families added crackers to make the soup more filling, or used different types of cheese depending on what was on sale. This meal could be prepared quickly when parents came home tired from work. The combination of hot soup and melted cheese satisfied hunger while providing comfort during difficult times. Jello salad. Jello salad sounds strange today, but it was an economical way to add nutrition and bulk to meals. Flavored gelatin was mixed with fruits, vegetables, or even small amounts of meat to create colorful side dishes. Popular combinations included lime jello with cabbage and carrots, or orange jello with canned fruit. These salads were served at potluck dinners and family gatherings because they were cheap to make and fed many people. The gelatin provided protein, while the added ingredients contributed vitamins and minerals. Some families made Jello salads with cottage cheese or cream cheese to increase the protein content. These colorful dishes brightened up plain meals and made children more willing to eat vegetables. The salads could be made ahead and kept in the refrigerator, making meal planning easier for busy families. Spaghetti and meatballs. Spaghetti and meatballs stretched expensive ground beef with cheap pasta and homemade tomato sauce. The meatballs were made small and mixed with breadcrumbs, eggs, and seasonings to make the meat go further. Tomato sauce was made from canned tomatoes, tomato paste, and seasonings, rather than buying expensive pre-made sauce. This dish was perfect for feeding large families because pasta was filling and inexpensive. Some families added vegetables like onions, peppers, or mushrooms to the sauce for extra nutrition. The dish could be made in large batches and reheated throughout the week. Children loved twirling the long noodles and hunting for meatballs, making dinner time more enjoyable. This Italian-American dish became comfort food that satisfied both hunger and the desire for something that felt special. Potato pancakes. Potato pancakes turned cheap potatoes into a filling meal that felt more substantial than plain boiled potatoes. Grated potatoes were mixed with eggs, flour, and seasonings, then fried into crispy pancakes. These pancakes were served with applesauce, sour cream, or just butter and salt. The dish was popular in families with German or Eastern European heritage, where potatoes were a dietary staple. Potato pancakes could be made with potatoes that were starting to go bad, reducing food waste. The eggs and flour added protein and helped bind the mixture together. Some families served these pancakes for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on what else was available. The crispy outside and fluffy inside created satisfying textures that made simple potatoes feel like a special treat. Beans and cornbread. Beans and cornbread provided complete protein when meat was too expensive or unavailable. Dried beans were soaked overnight and cooked with onions, salt pork, or ham hocks for flavor. The cornbread was made with cornmeal, flour, eggs, and buttermilk when available. This combination was filling, nutritious, and extremely economical. Different regions had their own variations: navy beans in the north, pinto beans in the south, and black beans in some areas. The beans were often cooked all day to make them tender and flavorful. Some families added vegetables like tomatoes or peppers to the beans for extra nutrition. This meal was so filling that it could satisfy heavy laborers who needed lots of calories. The combination proved that simple ingredients could create satisfying, nutritious meals. Liver and onions. Liver was one of the cheapest cuts of meat available, and cooking it with onions made it more palatable for families who couldn't afford better cuts. Thin slices of liver were dredged in flour and cooked quickly with sliced onions until just done. The onions added sweetness that balanced the strong flavor of the liver. This dish provided iron and other nutrients that were essential for growing children and hard-working adults. Some families soaked the liver in milk before cooking to reduce the strong taste. The key was not overcooking the liver, which made it tough and bitter. Many children didn't like liver, but parents insisted they eat it because it was nutritious and affordable. This dish represented the reality of Depression-era eating. Families ate what they could afford, not necessarily what they preferred. Egg salad sandwiches. Egg salad sandwiches turned inexpensive eggs into a filling meal that could be prepared quickly. Hard-boiled eggs were mashed with mayonnaise, mustard, and seasonings, then served on bread with lettuce if available. This protein-rich filling was more economical than meat while providing essential nutrients. Some families added pickle relish or celery for extra flavor and texture. The sandwiches were perfect for lunches because they didn't require heating and could be made ahead. Many families raised their own chickens, making eggs even more economical. The sandwich filling could be stretched with additional mayonnaise or even mashed potatoes when eggs were scarce. These sandwiches represented simple, honest food that satisfied hunger without breaking the budget. Shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie used small amounts of leftover meat mixed with vegetables and topped with mashed potatoes. The meat was stretched with gravy, onions, and whatever vegetables were available: carrots, peas, corn, or green beans. The mixture was placed in a baking dish and topped with mashed potatoes, then baked until golden. This dish was perfect for using up leftovers while creating a meal that felt complete and satisfying. Some families used ground beef instead of leftover roast, making it more like cottage pie. The mashed potato topping made the dish filling while adding comfort and richness. This one-dish meal provided protein, vegetables, and starch in an economical package. Families could clean out their refrigerator while creating a meal that everyone enjoyed. Pancakes for dinner. Pancakes weren't just for breakfast. They were an economical dinner option when other ingredients were scarce. Flour, eggs, milk, and baking powder created filling pancakes that could be served with butter, syrup, or jam. Some families added cornmeal to make the pancakes more nutritious and economical. The pancakes were served with whatever protein was available: bacon, sausage, or even just butter. This meal was popular because the ingredients were shelf-stable and always available. Children loved having breakfast for dinner, making it easier to get them to eat. The pancakes were filling enough to satisfy hunger, while being much cheaper than meat-based meals. Some families served pancakes with applesauce or canned fruit for extra nutrition and flavor. Stuffed cabbage rolls. Stuffed cabbage rolls used inexpensive cabbage leaves to wrap small amounts of meat and rice into filling portions. Ground beef was mixed with rice, onions, and seasonings, then wrapped in blanched cabbage leaves. The rolls were simmered in tomato sauce until tender, creating a complete meal in one pot. This dish was popular in families with Eastern European heritage, where cabbage was a dietary staple. The cabbage provided vitamins and fiber, while the meat and rice provided protein and carbohydrates. Some families made the filling with more rice and less meat to stretch the ingredients further. The rolls could be made ahead and reheated, making them perfect for busy families. This dish proved that immigrant cooking techniques could create satisfying meals from simple ingredients. Fried rice. Fried rice turned leftover rice into a complete meal by adding eggs, vegetables, and small amounts of meat. Day-old rice was stir-fried with scrambled eggs, onions, and whatever vegetables were available. Soy sauce added flavor, while small amounts of leftover meat or canned meat provided protein. This dish was economical because it used ingredients that might otherwise go to waste. Some families added bean sprouts or canned peas for extra nutrition. The dish was quick to prepare, making it perfect for busy weeknights. Children liked the mild flavors and fun textures of fried rice. This Chinese-American dish became popular because it was adaptable, economical, and satisfying. Families could clean out their refrigerator while creating a meal that felt exotic and special. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Creamed chipped beef on toast, known as SOS in military circles, turned dried beef into a filling meal. Dried beef was rinsed to remove excess salt, then cooked in white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. The creamy mixture was served over toast, creating a protein-rich meal from shelf-stable ingredients. This dish was popular because dried beef didn't require refrigeration and lasted for months. The white sauce made the salty beef more palatable, while adding calories and richness. Some families added hard-boiled eggs or peas to make the dish more substantial. The meal was filling enough to satisfy heavy laborers, while being economical enough for tight budgets. This dish represented the ingenuity of cooks, who could make something satisfying from the simplest ingredients. Potato soup. Potato soup turned cheap potatoes into a filling meal that warmed the body and soul. Potatoes were diced and cooked with onions and water or milk until tender, then mashed slightly to thicken the soup. Butter and seasonings were added for flavor, creating a rich, creamy soup. Some families added celery, carrots, or leftover vegetables for extra nutrition. The soup was often served with crackers or bread to make it more filling. This dish was perfect for cold weather when families needed warming, economical meals. The soup could be made with potatoes that were starting to go bad, reducing food waste. Many families made large batches and reheated portions throughout the week. This simple soup proved that basic ingredients could create comfort food that satisfied both hunger and the need for warmth. Mock apple pie. When apples were out of reach and crackers were cheap, resourceful cooks found a way to create a convincing dessert with what they had on hand. By soaking Ritz crackers in a spiced syrup of sugar and cinnamon, they could mimic the taste and texture of apple filling so well that most people couldn't tell the difference. It became a beloved staple during hard times, a dish that proved creativity could make up for a lack of ingredients. The magic was in how those buttery crackers softened and absorbed the syrup, transforming into layers that felt surprisingly similar to baked apples. Around the dinner table, families would dig in with wide eyes, marveling at the illusion and savoring every bite, completely unaware of the clever switch. This pie wasn't just memorable because it saved money, it created shared joy. Kids loved helping crush the crackers, moms took pride in the mix, and everyone held their breath for that first slice. It was a dish that turned frugality into a kind of playful wonder, where even the simplest pantry items could feel like a celebration. Fried green tomatoes. When tomato vines offered more green fruit than ripe, home cooks didn't let them go to waste. Sliced thick, dipped in cornmeal, and fried until crisp, green tomatoes became a crunchy, tangy treat that turned excess into excellence. To get it right, the tomatoes needed just the right cut, sturdy enough to hold up in the pan, but thin enough to cook through. The cornmeal crust provided a satisfying crunch, while frying mellowed the sharp tang of the unripe tomatoes. The result was a golden, crispy dish that quickly became a Southern staple, served as a side dish, appetizer, or even a snack. The beauty of fried green tomatoes was in their transformation. What could have been tossed aside became something crave-worthy. Families gathered around plates piled high, reminded that with a little ingenuity, even the leftovers from the garden could become the highlight of the meal. Ham and bean soup. After holiday feasts, that leftover ham bone wasn't wasted. It was the beginning of something even better. Dropped into a pot with dried navy beans and slow simmered all day, it became the base of a rich, hearty soup that could stretch for days. Cooking it was almost an event in itself. Beans soaked overnight, onions and carrots joined in, and the house slowly filled with the cozy scent of slow-cooked comfort. As the broth thickened and the flavors deepened, everyone knew something special was brewing. This soup wasn't just delicious, it was practical. It used every scrap of what was left and turned it into nourishment that could feed the whole family. More than that, it was a reminder that nothing had to go to waste, and with a little patience, even a ham bone could become a treasure. Beans and franks. What began as a humble pairing became a weeknight favorite in homes across America. Baked beans were dressed up with brown sugar, mustard, and slices of hot dogs, then left to simmer until the flavors blended into a sweet, smoky, savory masterpiece. Cooked low and slow in a Dutch oven or crock pot, the beans thickened and mellowed while the hot dogs soaked up the rich sauce. It was the kind of dish that needed no introduction, just a warm spoon and maybe a hunk of cornbread. Simple, filling, and full of flavor, beans and franks proved you didn't need fancy ingredients to make something satisfying. It brought comfort to the table and reminded families that everyday food could still feel like a treat. Milk toast. Gentle, warm, and deeply comforting, milk toast was the answer to many of life's quieter moments, from sick days to slow mornings. Made by pouring warm milk over toasted bread and seasoning with butter, salt, or sugar, it was a dish that nourished without overwhelming. Its texture, soft, almost pudding-like, made it perfect for children, the elderly, or anyone in need of a mild, easy-to-digest meal. Though simple, milk toast could be dressed up in countless ways: a sprinkle of cinnamon, a drizzle of honey, or even a splash of vanilla. But beyond the ingredients, milk toast was about care. It was what a mother made when someone wasn't feeling well. It was what you ate when you needed comfort more than flavor. In its simplicity, it carried warmth and love, the essence of true comfort food. Liver and onions. Every mother knew that liver packed more nutrition per pound than almost any other meat, making it a weekly staple when budgets were tight and growing children needed iron. The trick was soaking the liver in milk for an hour before cooking, which removed the strong metallic taste that made kids wrinkle their noses. Smart mothers would coat thin slices in seasoned flour and fry them quickly with sweet caramelized onions, creating a meal that even the pickiest eaters would finish. The whole house would smell like a real home-cooked dinner, not the processed foods that would later take over American kitchens. Fathers would praise their wives for serving such a nutritious meal, while children learned to appreciate foods that were good for them, even if they didn't always taste like candy. This dish taught entire generations that eating well sometimes meant eating things that challenged your taste buds, but rewarded your health. Fried bologna sandwich. When regular bologna wasn't enough, workers fried it up for extra flavor. The heat transformed thin bologna slices into crispy, curved cups that held other ingredients perfectly. Smart cooks scored the edges to prevent excessive curling. The frying process caramelized the meat's surface while keeping the center tender. White bread got toasted in the same pan, soaking up those savory drippings. Yellow mustard and maybe an onion slice completed the masterpiece. The sandwich offered more flavor than its cold cousin, perfect for weekend breakfast or hearty lunch. Factory workers could fry bologna on any hot surface, making it practical for workplace cooking. Before we move on to the next meal, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps a small channel like this grow. Salmon croquettes. Canned salmon transformed into golden, crispy patties that stretched one tin into a meal for 6 people, proving that Depression-era cooking wisdom still worked in prosperous times. Mothers would mix the flaked salmon with breadcrumbs, beaten eggs, and minced onion, then form them into small oval shapes that sizzled perfectly in a cast-iron skillet. These weren't fancy restaurant fare, but they were protein-rich, budget-friendly, and filling enough to satisfy hungry workers and growing children. Served alongside mashed potatoes and green beans, salmon croquettes represented the practical creativity that defined 1950s home cooking. The key was removing every tiny bone from the canned salmon, a tedious but necessary task that mothers performed while chatting with their children about their school day. Many families serve these on Friday nights as their traditional fish dinner, creating a weekly ritual that everyone looked forward to despite the humble ingredients. Before we move on to the next meal, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps a small channel like this grow. Tuna salad sandwich. Tuna salad sandwiches provided affordable protein when meat prices climbed too high. A can of tuna, mayonnaise, and chopped celery created the foundation for countless variations. Some added pickle relish for tang, others preferred chopped eggs for richness. Sweet pickle chips gave textural contrast, while onion powder added depth without overwhelming chunks. The mixture improved with time, allowing flavors to meld in the refrigerator overnight. White bread or toast held the creamy filling perfectly. Office workers could make them ahead for easy brown bag lunches. Fishermen's wives stretched expensive protein with mayonnaise and creativity, feeding families affordably while delivering complete nutrition and satisfying taste. Tuna noodle casserole. The combination of egg noodles, canned tuna, cream of mushroom soup, and frozen peas created a one-dish wonder that busy mothers could assemble in minutes and bake while helping with homework. This wasn't gourmet cooking, but it was smart cooking, using pantry staples and simple ingredients to create something that tasted like home and love. The crispy breadcrumb topping added texture, while the creamy sauce held everything together in perfect harmony. Leftovers actually tasted better the next day, making it the kind of meal that kept giving long after the dinner dishes were done. Church potluck dinners always featured at least 3 different versions of this casserole, each family swearing their recipe was the best. The sound of the casserole bubbling in the oven became the soundtrack of busy weeknight evenings when mothers juggled cooking dinner with helping children with homework and preparing for the next day. Pimento cheese sandwich. Pimento cheese sandwiches brought Southern comfort to working folks everywhere. Sharp cheddar cheese mixed with mayonnaise and diced pimentos created a spread that conquered hearts across America. The secret was grating the cheese fresh. Pre-shredded never achieved the same creamy consistency. Red pimentos added color and mild sweetness, while mayonnaise bound everything together. Some cooks added cream cheese for extra richness or hot sauce for heat. The mixture spread easily on soft white bread and lasted for days. Country stores sold it by the pound. Factory workers could eat it without refrigeration. The sandwich delivered familiar flavors that reminded everyone of home cooking and grandmother's kitchen. Pot roast with vegetables. Sunday dinner meant pot roast slowly braising in the oven, while families got ready for church, filling the house with the kind of aroma that made everyone eager to come home. The tough, inexpensive cuts of beef became fork tender after hours of slow cooking, while carrots, potatoes, and onions absorbed all those rich, meaty flavors. Smart cooks started this meal early in the day, knowing that low and slow was the secret to transforming humble ingredients into something spectacular. The leftover gravy made perfect sauce for the vegetables, and any remaining meat became the foundation for Monday's hash or sandwiches. The whole house would smell like Sunday dinner from morning until evening, creating an atmosphere of warmth and anticipation that brought families together. This was the kind of meal that taught patience and planning, showing how time and care could transform tough cuts of meat into something tender and delicious. Patty melt. The patty melt bridged the gap between hamburger and grilled cheese with genius simplicity. A beef patty grilled with caramelized onions and melted cheese between slices of rye bread created diner perfection. The secret was cooking everything together. Onions caramelized in beef drippings, while cheese melted over hot meat. Butter grilled the bread golden, while melting the cheese completely. Swiss cheese was traditional, but American worked too. The sandwich required skilled timing to get everything perfectly melted and toasted simultaneously. Truck stop diners served them around the clock. Short-order cooks could make them on any flat-top grill. The combination of flavors and textures created something greater than the sum of its parts. Chicken and dumplings. When a whole chicken needed to feed a large family, smart mothers knew that turning it into chicken and dumplings would stretch one bird into a meal that satisfied everyone around the table. The chicken was first simmered with onions, carrots, and celery until it fell off the bone, creating a rich broth that became the foundation for fluffy, pillowy dumplings. The secret was not lifting the lid while the dumplings cooked, allowing them to steam properly and become light as air. This was the kind of meal that took time and patience, but rewarded families with something that tasted like pure comfort and care. Grandmothers passed down their dumpling recipes through generations, each family convinced their version was the absolute best in the neighborhood. The steam that escaped when the pot was finally opened filled the kitchen with an aroma that meant love, tradition, and the kind of cooking that couldn't be rushed or faked. Loose meat sandwich. Loose meat sandwiches brought Midwestern practicality to lunchtime. Seasoned ground beef cooked loose and served on hamburger buns created satisfying meals without burger complications. The meat stayed deliberately crumbly rather than formed into patties. Simple seasoning, salt, pepper, maybe onion, let beef flavor shine. Some cooks added Worcestershire sauce for depth or ketchup for sweetness. The sandwich required careful eating to prevent spillage, but the payoff was pure beef satisfaction. Iowa diners made them famous, though the concept spread wherever ground beef was affordable. Workers appreciated the protein density, while enjoying familiar flavors that reminded them of home cooking and maternal care wrapped in convenient sandwich form. Shepherd's pie. Ground lamb or beef layered with vegetables and topped with creamy mashed potatoes created a complete meal in one dish that satisfied even the heartiest appetites. The meat was seasoned with herbs and cooked with onions and carrots until rich and flavorful, then spread in a baking dish and covered with a thick layer of buttery mashed potatoes. When baked, the potato topping turned golden brown and slightly crispy, while the meat mixture stayed moist and savory underneath. This was the kind of meal that proved simple ingredients, when treated with care and attention, could create something truly special and memorable. The British heritage of this dish connected American families to their roots, while the practical one-dish format suited busy modern lifestyles perfectly. Many mothers would make individual portions in ramekins, giving each family member their own personal shepherd's pie that felt special and carefully prepared. Sloppy Joes. Ground beef cooked with onions and a tangy, slightly sweet sauce, then served on hamburger buns, created a messy but delicious meal that kids absolutely loved. The sauce was the secret, a combination of ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and brown sugar that gave the meat its distinctive flavor and slightly sticky texture. Smart mothers served these with plenty of napkins and often paired them with potato chips or coleslaw. This was the kind of casual, fun meal that brought families together around the table without any fuss or formality. Birthday parties and casual gatherings often featured sloppy joes because they were easy to make in large quantities and appealed to both children and adults. The informal nature of eating these messy sandwiches created a relaxed atmosphere that encouraged conversation and laughter around the dinner table.